Hey everyone, we're back again with another episode of Three Uniques. Today I have on Diane Lam. Hi Diane, how are you doing today?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
It's amazing to have you here. So you're calling us, you're calling in from Seattle,
Yes, I'm physically sitting in Seattle today.
but we just talked about that you just came back from how many months? You were in New Zealand, Australia, traveling around the South Pacific.
So I was gone for 3 months and I just got back and I'm just settling back into this life in America.
Oh, that's so amazing. So we'll talk about that a little bit later because it all ties into what Diane does, which I'm always like fascinated about when I see her on Instagram, and she's always showcasing the work that she's doing to support her clients. So here's a little bit of background on Diane. She's a first generation Asian American Pacific Islander operations coach for online business owners, which is amazing. She helps business owners scale to multi-$6 million businesses or beyond that. So
Yeah.
just at that point, I guess, where it's like, maybe you've brought in your first 100, 200, like you're starting to get into that multi six figures. Now it's like, okay, we've got to start scaling some operations. We've got to start streamlining some things. Talk to us a little bit how you support your clients.
Yeah, it's usually around that things start to get to around 100, 150, 200. And that's where I really start to see clients are like, oh, well, I could do this by myself. And now it's starting to get hard. Now, the stakes are a little bit higher. Now I have more going on. Now marketing is a bigger deal. Now I'm launching or I have more clients when you're kind of getting that 200 ballpark. And
Right.
that's when they're really looking for some version of me. A lot of times they're really looking for OBMs or other people to really help them kind of up level the operation so they can kind of take a step back. So a lot of the work that I do is like, well, yeah, you can take a step back, but do it intentionally. Do it
Mm-hmm.
with some focus so that you know that the things that you're building, the pieces that you're putting into place, the people that you're hiring are actually the right people
Right.
and that you're making the right move. So I always start with like, let's do a full audit. Let's assess whether or not you have the foundational pieces or some foundational pieces that align with the way that you actually want to operate. Okay, if not, yeah, we'll have some suggestions. We'll have places to fix things or fill in some gaps. But chances are there might be some things that are already working. So no need to like burn it all down.
Right.
Like let's start with what you have in place and let's fix the critical issues. Like let's stabilize the business. Then we can go into all right, like so well, what does need to go into the foundation? And then you go into streamlining. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to scale. I'm just going to jump straight into it. I'm going to start hiring. I'm going to build systems. I'm going to do all the automations. But
Yeah.
before you can really do that, you actually do need a strong foundation. You need technology before you can automate anything. You need team members before you can delegate. You need systems to help support those team members. So it's all really interconnected. And when I am working with a client, I'm looking at all of those things, right? So I'm looking at, well, what systems, what
Mm-hmm.
team members, what tech, what automations, because it is going to be different for everyone. And your sweet spot is very, very aligned to you and how you want to operate and how you want to scale your business. We could have the same businesses, but we could do the same thing. We could have similar offers, but my goals and how I want to run are going to be very different from the way that you want to run. Therefore, the systems and the team members and the tech that I use to do that are going to be very different. So that's really my approach is like, let's make it custom to what you actually want and how you want to operate. And let's fill in the gaps from there. Right. So
Right.
that's really what I'm doing when I'm supporting my clients is like, let's look at all of these pieces and let's find your perfect fit formula for scaling.
And I'm always curious, is it a chicken egg type of thing where it's like, okay, when I'm at a certain revenue, that's when I need to bring in someone like Diane because I need to like, create more ease and flow in my business by adding on the team, adding on the technology, the systems, etc. Or is it, I could be coasting, feeling great about, coming in at 100,000 a year, but maybe if I brought in this system or these people, I could actually see myself again in flow, not from a hustle hack it out standpoint, but it's like, oh, you know what, I can just do things no problem at 100K and bring in 100K every year. But it's like, oh, if I put in a few of these things under Diane's advice, I can actually see myself get up to 300K like easily.
Yeah.
Right? Like is like, so which is it? Because that's why I say it's like the chicken or the egg. Should I think about bringing you on when I know I want to scale, or it's like even when I don't think I need to scale, but I could be like just missing opportunity to increase my revenue by not bringing in those technologies or those people?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a very consulting answer. It
Yeah.
depends. It really depends
Okay.
on your business. It depends on you, right? Because so I will say that a lot of people say, yes, I do want to scale, but there's also the element of like, well, I also want to grow, right? We kind of use
Mm,
scale and grow interchangeably.
okay.
And I think the the inflection point is really where which one is the priority for you, right? So I often see at 100, 150, that's really where you're really still focused on growth, right? You want to scale, it's in the background, like that's a goal, you're getting to that place, but really the focus is on bringing in more revenue, bringing in more clients, right? Really bringing in more on the dollar side of
Mhm.
things versus like when you really hit 200, when you're getting into 250 and you're really by yourself or you have a skeleton team, that's when it becomes too painful to maintain those levels. And
Right.
that's where I see the shift in like, okay, well, growth is not my priority as much anymore as like, you know, creating some ease, creating some spaciousness in the business, right? So there's usually one that you want more than the other. And I will say that usually it becomes the tipping point when things start to really get difficult to manage and sustain. And that's really where I see it. Like, you know, you could have a really successful business at 200K running by yourself. But if you really want to go beyond that, you want to get to 500, you want to get to a million, you want to go beyond, like, it's going to be really, really hard to do that without team members, without systems, without a solid operating foundation beneath you.
Right.
Um, and in my in my experience, it's really been, well, you gotta have to you kind of have to feel, you know, the difference and the, I don't want to say the pain, a little bit of like the pressure in your business before it really becomes a priority, because like we always want the thing that feels really good, and it feels really good to grow your business, to make more money, to bring in more clients,
Right.
versus like, oh well, I have to build a foundation that I can't really see it, I can't really touch it, and I don't really know if it's doing anything at this point,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
don't know
that's
if it's
where,
working. Yeah.
yeah, that's where you'll see the shift, is when it's like, oh, things starting to get, there's a lot more pressure on the business owner, and that's when the priorities really shift towards scaling. So I would say, like, you know, chase growth for as long as you want, right? As long as you're able to, because as long as you want to do that and you can do it, like, people are going to do it, right? Like I know that I would do it, and I know a lot of business owners would do that. But then there becomes a point where it's like, okay, now I can't do this sustainably. Now this is getting really hard. Now I feel like my time is being taken up. Now I'm feeling overwhelmed and pressured. Now growth is not, like, more money is not going to help me with that. Like, I
Right.
need something else, and that's where it becomes more of a shift in the priority, right? So
Okay.
it depends on when you feel that point, right?
Okay. I love that. I love the fact that there's the growth and scaling. Sometimes people just mix those words together, but I love how you just separated them out so that it could be this, it could be that, it could be both, but probably one is going to be more dominant than the other depending on where you're at in your business. So that's a good shift there. And you also have a quiz that people can access, right? And then
Yeah.
determine sort of where they're on it, and then, you know, what options that they could work with you on.
Yeah, I have like a mini assessment quiz. What will
Mhm.
just tell you kind of like, what is the biggest challenge that's really standing in your way of making your next 100K, right? So that's really there to help you kind of see what part of your operating foundation might be weak, and maybe you just need to shore it up a little bit,
Right.
or maybe it's like, oh, this whole thing,
Oh
everything,
my gosh. Awesome.
is an issue. So
Right.
that is available at dianelam.com/quiz, and it's just, you know, I think it's like 7 questions, and you can kind of find out like, well, what is the thing that is really, really standing in my way right this moment? Is it
Right.
that I just need to shore something up, or I actually really need to focus on my foundation?
Okay, I love that. And how do you like, so when you work with a business owner, what does that look like right now? So like after you've done that assessment and now they decide that they want to work with you on what talk us through kind of like what that experience would be like.
Yeah, so the experience, I always start with an assessment period, right? Because like we can't scale anything until
Mhm.
we know where you are and where we want to go. So I approach things always like, I don't want to say I'm self-centered, but whenever I approach operations, it's always going to be about you. You should be the center of your operations. How do you want to operate? How do you want to live your life? How do you want your business to support your lifestyle,
Mhm.
right? So we take all of those things into account and we reverse engineer the systems, the team members, the technology, and the automations that are going to give you the outcome, the lifestyle, the hours that you want to work, instead of just saying, okay, well, everyone needs a marketing system, or everyone needs, a team growth system, or everyone needs an onboarding system, all of those things.
Mhm.
Well, what's important to you? And let's reverse engineer how you want to show up in all of those systems. So that's why the audit piece is so important. That's what will tell us, okay, well, exactly what is important and what priority and what pieces need to be built. And from there, we go into like, okay, well, you have your blueprint, you have your plan, and I can help you as your CEO, COO guide throughout that process, where, because there's always going to be things that are like, oh, okay, well, I need to build a system. What does that exactly mean? How should we build it specific for this business? Like, ooh, I drafted it. Is this actually the right thing? So there are things like that that I'm really helping guide my clients through our engagement, and to make sure that they're always going to get the results that they want from any system, any technology, any automation, or any team members we hire. You're getting the support that you want. You're getting the right result when you run that automation. You have the right tech to support you the way that you want to run. The systems are working and actually freeing up your time. That's the goal we're always trying to hit.
Right.
And I can tell you how to do it, and you can take off running with it. But usually there's sometimes like there's some nuance, right? And like, okay,
Sure.
is this right? It needs adjustment. It's still not quite working right. What can we do? And those are the things that I'm really working with my clients on after the assessment period.
Okay. All right. That's cool. So going back to your trip to Australia and New Zealand, you were gone for 3 months away from your hub in Seattle. What was the biggest indication to you that everything you work on with your clients, like in your own business, was like working? Like, what was the big thing that you're like, oh, I'm so glad I put this in place. It allowed me to work away from, my time zone, work on the other side of the planet, and still be able to connect with my clients, grow my business. I'm just kind of curious what that one thing was.
I can't say it was one thing. I would say it's like a lot of it, I would say a lot of it comes down to my team. Like I
Okay.
could not have done anything without them. And a lot of my team's ability to like really be there and support me in ways that I don't even have to ask for, right? Like I don't need to ask my admin to like, she's going to hop in and like look at my calendar, and, she knows I have travel days. So she's going to go in there and change things up and make sure that like, oh, well, we have to move certain calls because you're going to be in the air or whatnot, right? She just knows to do that because we've worked together for a long time. And I have a process for how I bring people into my sphere, how I bring people into my business. So they know for your particular role, these are my expectations of you. And that this is your scope of work and this is what you're meant to handle. And you oversee and own, like you're my admin, you oversee and own my calendar. So
Right.
anything scheduling related, you have power over, and it's your role to really like be proactive on that. So she was really helping me manage on the client side of things, making sure that like I never touched those calendars. I never touched the acuity thing. She was kind of updating things on the back end for me, and
Okay.
checking with me. Like that information is constantly flowing up to me. I don't need to think about it because the team is thinking about it and they're coming to me like, hey, I'm thinking this. Like I think these look like travel days. So like, what if we adjust your schedule to be your call availability are within these bounds,
Right.
right? Like, does that work for you? Like, let's try it out. Or I'm going to move these calls for you. The same thing with my marketing team, who are in charge of kind of producing all of the content, who are in charge of making sure that like my social media presence is maintained, that we have things going out on Instagram. They're managing the DMs, they're managing kind of all the inboxes. They do that without me, really. Like, I mean, I think it probably takes me 5 minutes to approve all of our content
Right.
every couple of weeks. And they do that because we've had really, really tight review cycles, right? Like they know what my process is for my marketing, for what is the look and the feel, what is the tone, what is the style, what are we selling this month? Like, what are we promoting? And there has been like a period of time when we were getting onboarded where, yeah, it was very tight review cycles where I was redlining everything so they could really get up to speed on that.
Right.
And since then, like, I mean, I will say probably like the longest it takes me to review maybe 2 weeks worth of content is maybe 10-15 minutes, because we have gotten into that good, like solid pattern of
Yeah.
working together. So part of it is the team, but also having the process to show them like, hey, this is kind of what I'm expecting. This is what I have in mind. These are the outcomes that I want. And I'm open to how we get there, but this is the outcome that is expected every single time. And like, making sure that we are constantly adjusting our workflow till we get to that perfect sweet spot where now it's like, oh yeah, like I get a notification when content is ready and I can pop in there and like bing, 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 bing. And
Yeah.
it's
I love
done.
that.
It just happens without me.
Yeah.
I don't have to put in comments. I don't have to create anything in Photoshop. I don't need to like really make any big adjustments to the content. It's all kind of working without me. So that's a big part.
Wonderful. That's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
So, Diane, you're also here to share your 3 uniques with us today. I'd love to know what they are.
So my first big unique is like big and small picture. So I think my superpower is really that like I can always see the big picture. Like,
Okay.
what is the big goal? What are we trying to accomplish? But I can also see the granular details. Like, okay, well, what are all the steps we need to get there? Right. Which is, I don't think a lot of people do that or have that capability. And that's what's made me really successful kind of in my role, is that like, okay, big picture and then every single step to get there. So like we have a clear pathway to whatever our goals are. So I think that that is something that really, really makes me unique. Number two is kind of my approach to systems building is like, I never just like say, oh, well, everyone needs, this kind of system. Well, it's always very you-centric because like I don't want it to sound bad, but I am very me-centric. Like,
Okay. I think you need to be in the world of people pleasing. It's like you need to be able to have yourself at the center of attention. Otherwise, it's really easy to get straight off course. So
yeah, so it's like, especially if this is my business, I want it to support me,
yeah.
and I want that for my clients as well. So I approach our work very differently. I'm like, you should be the center of your business, and like let's reverse engineer
Mhm.
everything around that to support you. So I think that that is also very unique in terms of my field. And I think in terms of just like me as a person, like I am something that makes me very unique is like I have like my entire background is logic driven. I am like an ex Wall Street person. I had a finance degree, but I'm also like the most woo-woo person you're ever going to
Okay.
meet. So like I believe I'm a believer. Like I have like my horoscope, I have my pendulum over here. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna be like a Mercury retrograde. I need to like secure all of my all of my electronic goods. So I think that's something that's like, oh, well, you have this, you're very grounded in logic, but you're also like way up in here in the clouds. Like, what? I would not have thought that of you. So I think that is something that's also very unique about me, where people don't usually like think that of me.
Yeah.
And also, like, I think it kind of like gives me a healthy balance of like, okay, well, there's some things that we just can't control, so let's control what we can control, and like the rest go to the universe.
I love that.
Yeah. So
Has someone been like integral in your life that's like mentored you or coached you into like, bringing out those uniques and having them like really like showcased in your life, in your work?
I will say, I mean, I like I struggle to say that it was like a great experience. I've had a few people who have really pushed me to
Mhm.
my edge in terms of performance, especially when I was working in New York, when I was working on Wall Street, when I was working in finance.
Right.
Like, I won't say it was like the best like mental and emotional experience, but it really showed me grit and determination and like
Right.
what I was capable of when somebody really, really pushed me to like my end bounds, right? Like in terms of like what the expectations were for performance, what I was able to do.
Right.
Like I won't say that it was like a super positive experience, but like it really showed me a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And I bring a lot of that into my business because I'm like, I can see how much I can accomplish, but I don't need that. I don't need to do that. I'm enough here
Yes.
where I
Yeah.
am the most comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to understand that. But I do have a couple of people where I'm like, you know what? I'm actually really thankful that you pushed me that hard because it allowed me to kind of see what I'm capable of. And it also gave me a lot of the skills that I take into my business and that I've been able to turn into my own business, right? So yes and no, I guess is like the
Yeah,
short
no,
answer.
as soon as you said that, that completely resonated with me, and I'm sure it resonates with other callers that are listening in. Because I say callers, it's not like I'm bringing on like callers like into a hotline or something, but to our listeners. But I think it's those situations where, yeah, you don't want to be playing in that arena the whole time because it's just a huge shock and burden on your nervous system and on your brain that's kind of like swimming around in this like sea of sometimes doubt. But at the same time, you do see how strong you are in those situations. So if it's all the time, it's not always the healthiest thing. But I think some of the time where it's like, oh, I can actually take time out to reflect and go, wow, I can do really hard things in those situations. It can be a huge payoff that way. Absolutely.
Yeah. It wasn't until a lot later though, like because I think that like it was one of those experiences that you kind of like push down and you're like, okay, I'm out of it. I don't
Yeah.
need to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I would say probably the last like 3-4 years where I was like, oh, I see how all of these things connected and how all of these steps help move me to where I am today. Like I mean, kind of part of my woo background, right? Where I'm like, oh yeah, it was
Yeah.
all for a reason. And okay, I can really appreciate those moments where I was like really upset and felt like overwhelmed, like
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, okay, there was a reason for it. It really
Yeah.
did help me in the long run, even though it didn't feel like it.
And at the same time, it does sound like you've reshaped your business and what you offer your clients not to be that, but to deliver in a way where they could still maybe capitalize on their strengths, but do it in a way that is obviously great for their nervous system, right? So that's that, I bring in the financial, the process, the scaling business mindset that I grew up in that community. that was probably a little hard on me at sometimes, but at the same time, I've also looked introspectively internally to say, hey, this is what I bring forward and I can lead my way and, without, feeling like you're pushed to the edge the whole time. Because it sounds like you don't necessarily create that environment for your clients, right?
No, I was like, I want to avoid that environment as much as possible. Like I want it to
Like
be
you're not paying it forward to
as
them.
possible. I
It's
mean, like I think like as much ease as possible. I think in my day, in my
yeah.
clients' day, I think the goal for a lot of my clients is really like 25 hours a week or less. Like I want
Oh,
to be
I
able
love
to
that.
get, 500K, $1 million, and I don't want to work more than 25 hours a week. I'm like, okay, like that's fine. We can totally do that. We got to build the process around it. We got to build the team around it. We got to build all of the pieces in your foundation to operate so that you can have that, right? And
Yeah.
that's the goal.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So you've got a program that's happening right now, Effortless Expansion Program. Talk to us about
Yes.
that. What's that all about?
So Effortless Expansion is my custom it's a blend of mentorship and consulting. So it's where you get to learn from my experiences from running and working with multi-six-figure online businesses. And then also like my operations background from, 12 plus years in corporate, where all I did was build and manage large businesses or, large departments for, large financial institutions. So I bring both of that to the table to make sure that like, okay, so let's keep you at the center of this and let's make sure that you have all the right processes, all the right team members, all the right technology and the automations to really support you getting where you actually want to go, how you want to get there, right? Because there's a million ways to make $1 million. Pick one. And let's build the process and the pathway for you to get there. Because honestly, like the way that I do it is going to be different from the way that you do it, is going to be different from the next person who does it. So I'm really all about like, let's shape this around you. And that's what we do in the containers. We do the auditing, we create the pathway, and then we go in and like, okay, like I will guide you and advise you as a mentor, as a consultant. I'll just tell you sometimes like, this is the answer. Like, this is the software.
Stop
Ignore
wasting
all of
time over
these.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, don't waste your time with these. This is the answer. And
Okay.
here's how you're going to set it up. And then we'll go from there.
Okay. And then where can people find out more about that? That's dianelam.com.
Yeah, you can go to dianelam.com. All the info is there.
Okay. Awesome. And then what piece of advice, like your number one piece of advice that you receive that you use all the time? Like you'll just like, it's always your go-to piece of advice. Do you have something?
I mean, I embrace it more now, but I think there's a long time in my life where I was like, I did not want to believe it, where they're like, just keep it simple. Like the simplest thing is the easiest thing and the best way forward, where a lot of times it doesn't feel like that, especially when you're running a business online where you see a lot of complex strategies and funnels and like, oh, well, this person is doing this type of launch or that type of launch. It can get really easy to be like, oh, well, maybe I need to up level, like as I grow, like, do I need a more complex funnel? Do I need more like integrative technologies and things like that? So it's to me a really long time to embrace, like, just keep it simple. Like the simplest way is the best and the most direct way to what you want. And sometimes it feels like it's too easy. But that has been the best advice I've gotten, because like I feel like I've gone against it so many times and it's always been like a disaster.
Yeah. Well, and I guess to that point that we were talking about earlier about like your background working on Wall Street, working in New York, how do you ensure too that, these online businesses and these biz owners and entrepreneurs that you're working with don't get wrapped up in that whole like frenzy, that hustle, hack it out culture? Or maybe you do, but it doesn't sound like you do, because you're tripping off to like Australia and New Zealand and you've got this like sustaining machine that you've built. So how do you like create that? Because I think it's really easy. I mean, just because either depending on people's background and upbringing, schooling, etc., for us to be conditioned that that's just how it has to be with work. So even though we've got this great dream, this great possibility of creating our own business and leaving all of that behind, somehow it tends to creep in a little bit, right? And I often like entrepreneurs and business owners that come to me for coaching, because I'm coaching them around life and leadership. And they're still stressed out. They're still burnt out. They're taking that burnout, that way they worked in that office environment or that culture before, and still taking it into their business. What have you seen that sort of worked for helping them, shed that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a few different things. I say the first thing is like when we tie things back to their original goals, right? So a lot of times business owners will be like, well, I want this funnel, I want this amount of technology, or my business bestie and my coach use all of this tech, so I need to use it too.
Right.
But when you actually tie it out, I'm like, okay, well, you want to operate this way, right? Like you want to operate in this way over here. These 10 pieces of software you give me are not going to help you do that.
No.
So
Already I'm starting to get high. Like as soon as you said 10, I'm like 10. Oh my God, no. Yeah.
or like, 5, 3, whatever the number
Yeah.
is. Like so a lot
Sure.
of times once we tie it out to like, well, here's how you want to operate, these things are not going to help you do that because like of these 5 reasons. Like, I had a lot of people who were like, over the holidays where there were a lot of sales for technology, like, oh my God, should I buy a year-long membership to Kajabi? Like, oh my God, it's such a great deal. And I'm like, no, because this is what it's going to take when you actually, if you want to migrate from your platform, you have to do this and this and this. And then you are already well ingrained in this platform. Like you're going to have to move your payment system. You're going to have to move all of your landing pages. You're going to need to have
Right.
resourcing to transition everything. You have to do the build out in Kajabi. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, never
Plus, never mind
mind.
cancel subscriptions of already things that you've paid for,
Yeah.
right? And
So
so
it's like
then you're losing money on that too. So
yeah.
whatever price difference you're getting on this little bonus may not even, or the time, like you said, to do all that migration work might not even be worth it.
So I think when people see what it takes to do the thing that they want, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
never mind, never mind. Like, I don't want to do that. Right. And so that's kind of where I think there's a little bit of a reality check. And then also, I think that when a business owner really understands their operations in terms of like, oh, well, we do things this way because this is my goal, right? Which I don't think that a lot of, a lot of courses and platforms are not like really telling people, oh, build the systems, but they're not really helping them understand why they're
Right.
building their systems in a particular way or building their process in a particular way. When you know how things run and what the end results are supposed to be, you can trust it a little bit more, right? You can let it go. Versus like, well, I gave this to my VA. I wonder if it's done. I don't know. I got to follow up with it. I got to check in. I got to see all of those things. So that's what I see with a lot of my clients is that because they are to a certain extent kind of cut off from how their business really operates and how they want it to operate, they have a hard time really letting go. And that's where a lot of that like overwhelm and that anxiety comes in when they do try to step out of the business. So a lot of our work is not just like, okay, well, let's build the process, but like, let's make sure that you're also engaged and involved in the discussion. You don't need to write a single SOP, but you do need to understand why we made these decisions so that you can then trust the process. And you know that like, okay, they're running the process. I can let it go. I don't need to follow up. I don't need to check in because I know exactly what points information is flowing back up to me. And
Right.
I know how I'm going to stay in control of all of this. Right. So that is, I think, the other side of the coin that we like, that we don't really talk about or you don't really see when you're reading like, Traction or any of the big business books, right? They're not really talking about that side of, well, what it means to scale and be the CEO of your business as you are scaling or growing your business. Like that's the part of it where you got to be able to trust, and trust really comes from knowing.
Love it. So my last question for you, Diane, is if I was to give you a billboard and it could be anywhere on the planet and you could put anything on it, what would it say and where would it be?
Where would I put my billboard? Let me think about this.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just so many places that I would, I mean, I just close my eyes and it's like jelly beans for everyone is like the words that came to mind. But I'm like, that's not what I put on my billboard. I would say like my billboard would probably say choose the easy way. Like, cause there is the
Love
easy
it.
way. I'm
Yeah.
all about, let's do it easier. Let's do it slower. Let's take a break. Let's go a little, let's make it more simple.
Yeah.
Um, where would I put it? I feel like I would put it like on a really high traffic like street in India or something because there's like a lot of frenetic activity there. I'm like, let's just chill out. Like let's take the easy way.
Right.
I feel like that's where I would be. I would want to put it because like just so that people know there's the option. You can choose the easy way. And it is a choice.
Yeah.
Even if you do, what I found with a lot of business owners is even if you do take some of the actions to start delegating, scaling, like once you actually choose to intentionally like let go of certain things and really like commit to prioritize it, it's like you're not going to do it. Like you're not really going to commit to it. And so that's kind of where it's like you have to choose to keep things easy because it's really easy to, like you said, to get caught up in like, oh well, this person has this and this other coach and I saw them launch this way, and like that kind of like build up
Yeah.
online is really easy to get sucked into.
I actually loved how you said too, like you said it, and then I immediately went into the billboard question, but I want to go back to one thing really quickly. And you mentioned how it's like, like all the biz books out there, including Traction, will tell you to do it a certain way. And then you still said, and I see, my thing is, my background is like, yeah, I've done tons of strategy work in my corporate exec career and, you know, Rockefeller habits, et cetera. And then I discovered Traction. I was like, oh my God, this is so much simpler than everything else I've been doing the last 20 years. But even now, when I start working with entrepreneurs, it gets complicated even when you do Traction. So I think the key thing, like you always said, is just tune into yourself, like what feels like home, what feels like you, like, again, that intentional, like I want to be, you know, I want to have a $500,000 business and work 25 hours a week. It might not be all the things in Traction. Like even, you know, even the chapter on like, you know, creating data analytics and reports and stuff, you may not need all those reports. So don't worry about it. And, you know, take the best of the best, keep it simple, call someone like Diane.
Yes, exactly. And it's like the simpler the better, right? Because I would say like most businesses probably like, especially if they're like online businesses, don't necessarily need Traction until they're like already in the multi seven figures, just because of the way it's set up, right? Like because of the nature of like,
Yeah.
you know, how you build your leadership team and things like that are not things that you're going to see in like a lot of online businesses until much later. Because you have like a little bit more fluidity versus like if you had a traditional business, then it would become really important. Like, oh my God, we got to like put the right people in the right spaces. We got to like make sure that we have values and core assessments and stuff like that. So they're just like, there's things that are going to apply specifically to you, and they're going to be things that you can kind of take and be like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do as an online business owner. And it's about merging the two so that you have your formula and your like kind of secret sauce versus like, oh well, I'm gonna take Brenda's secret sauce
Right.
and try and fit myself into it. Well, we have very different goals. We have very different tastes. Like, the sauce that I like is probably not going to be the sauce that you like.
Right.
And those are the things that, like, you know, we really need to keep in mind, I think, as we develop businesses online.
Dan, it's been great. I love following you on Instagram. I love all the posts that you put out there and just the information that you share with your audience. And I think it's been great having you on the podcast today, just to give, like, I think all these like scaling, you know, online business owners and entrepreneurs, the people that I attract into my orbit, the people that you attract into your orbit, just that reassuring message, like you can build it how you want to build it. It doesn't have to be like how everybody else is doing it. Know what you want. Get clear on that. Call someone like Diane, because it's like, that's the thing that I learned like early on, is that you can, and I do this even in my coaching practice. Like I see, you know, people that have like, you know, brought in all the bells and whistles. They're not using 50% of it. Then they want to rip it out, get another new bell and whistle. And it's just like, whoa, slow it down. Bring someone in like Diane who like knows all those things and can help you align with your, you know, your vision, your purpose around your business, and then just create that ease, that I can't even talk either, the simplicity and the flow of it. So thanks so much, Diane, for being on today. I really appreciate you sharing all your wisdom and resources for people.
Thank you. It was great to be here, and I'll see you guys all again next time.
Yeah. And everyone that's tuning in and listening, just remember what I always say, there's 8 billion people on this planet. As of November 2022, it raised up to, I used to say there's 7.85 billion people. Now it's like we're at 8 billion people on the planet. Somebody needs what you've got. Get out there and share your 3 uniques. Thanks, everyone.